The book that I chose for my true crime project is Bad Blood by John Crew. The quote that I chose that I thought would really capture the reader is, "The way Theranos is operating is like trying to build a bus while you're driving the bus. Someone is going to get killed," on page 230. The reason why I chose this quote is because I thought it really encapsulated the way that Theranos is run and how poorly the business was regulated and controlled, and how they had too many active moving parts, but nothing was working together as a full unit. And you can see that by the lying and misleading information that was used. The characters in this book, the main one is Elizabeth Holmes, who is the founder and CEO of the company. She was a person who envisioned, or also the mastermind behind Theranos. This is the company that promised revolutionary blood testing technology. She's the one that came up with the idea and foundation that they could create a machine that could tell you or detect a bunch of tests on your blood by using a small droplet amount of blood. She presented a bold narrative, innovation, and attracting significant investment and media attention. Her charismatic persona and ambition were central to the company's rise. Many people believed her and thought she was a visionary and that she was truly going to make this insanely cool invention, and so she got many people to invest millions of dollars. The next person is Sunny Balwani, who was the president and COO of Theranos. Balwani was Holmes' partner and was a key figure in managing Theranos operations. One interesting thing about Sunny was he was very unknowledgeable about blood testing and about the industry altogether. Even it talks about one chapter in this book about how they attended a meeting and Sunny was so behind and didn't understand what the scientists were talking about, and he didn't even understand what potassium meant and how it involved with the invention. And it just shows you how did Sunny become the CEO of this company? And one of the main reasons is because he had a romantic relationship with Elizabeth, which is one of the leading factors to this corruption. He was also deeply involved into the company's day-to-day activities and decision-making, often seen as the enforcer who maintained a tight grip on the employees and information. There was many people who resigned and quit, or Sunny just threw out, and because he was such a corrupt person and so rude to his employees. The next person is Tyler Shungs and Erica Chung. They're both employees who voiced their concerns. These brave employees were important and influential people at Theranos who became increasingly disturbed by the company's practices and the unreliability of its blood testing technology. They eventually gathered all the evidence and spoke out, risking risking their careers and reputations to expose the truth. These were both the people that saw this technology and it was being used on actual patients and saw that these results aren't right and that it's dangerous to be using this type of machinery on actual people because of how unreliable the results and how dangerous it could be even if it was for a bunch of money. Next person is Ian Gibbons, who was a scientist who worked at Theranos. Gibbons was a brilliant scientist who reportedly grew disillusional and depressed due to the pressure and ethical compromises he witnessed within the company. His struggles and eventual death are often a tragic consequence of this horrible and toxic environment at Theranos. He had a special chapter explaining all the abuse he went through and how this abuse and hatred people had, especially Sunny was so mean to him, lended up to his suicide and how he died from this. The next influential person, is George Shultz. He was a board member and former U.S. Secretary of State. As a prominent and respected figure, his presence on Theranos board led to significant credibility to the company. His involvement created a major conflict of interest, as he was initially unaware or perhaps chose to overlook the fraudulent activities, and later to confront the scandal innovation to his own grandson Tyler Shultz, who also had an influential role in this book. Next person is John Carew, who was the investigative journalist for the Wall Street Journal. He is, through meticulous and persistent investigation, he's the one who uncovered the truth about the Theranos fraudulent technology and business practices. He is the one who saw what was actually happening and is the one who released it to the public and was like, show everyone what's going on. Lastly, Rochelle Gibbons was the wife of Ian Gibbons and she's the one who provided that key information to all the harassment. After her husband, Ian Gibbons says, she played a crucial role in revealing the horrible information to the investigators and journalists. She's the one who shed the light on the pressures and ethical concern that contributed to Ian's distress, offering vital insight to the internal workings of Theranos. Next is the setting, and most of it was in Theranos headquarters in Palo Alto, California. This is where most of the secretary and business decision happens. Palo Alto is not just an administrative place, but a central point for the strategic operations and the number of companies dealing. This is where Elizabeth and Sunny were mostly held up throughout the book, and this is where they made their decisions with the company and what to do and not to do. There's many labs and scientists were here, like the mini labs that they were used. The next important place was Stanford University. This is where Elizabeth Holmes started the company. This signifies the important birthplace of her research and her ideas. It was like, oh, I can start this company right here. This is more at the beginning of the book when it starts about the beginning of the company. Perhaps the early formation occurred within or close proximity to the academic institution, because I remember reading about how Elizabeth eventually dropped out of Stanford. Another main setting point is Phoenix. This location served as the main rollout locations for testing. This points to Phoenix as being a crucial market operation area where Theranos tested its technology and services on a much larger scale, just like people could come look and see this testing site, like I'm pretty sure Walgreens came. It likely interacted with the public and healthcare providers such as Walgreens. The next part is the structure. For me, I thought the structure was like how John Carew writes like a reporter. He focused on facts, like there's many facts. He jumped from different chapters explaining like how everything was built, like the technology. One of them was called the Edison. That was one of the inventions, and he talked mainly very specific points of how it was made and how it was important and what it was done, what it could do. It also focused on the events of the people going through. It was like setting up the storyline and how it started from the company's beginning all the way to the end and how it made it to the end. He used many interviews from many different people. He used very different outside sources, just like many employees and what they went through with the company to build up the story. He made sure there was much reliable evidence, and it was written in third person and is mostly objective. You can see all the factual stuff and making sure like what actually happened, and you can see also personal views by those interviews and journalistic reporting. The ending, it wasn't really any sort of like mystery, because you could kind of see even from the very beginning how this story was very like, you knew that the company was going to get be corrupt, and everything was going to be revealed at the very end. But you could see how the truth is shown about the company and the exposure and the immense pressure of the causes that Theranos like the cards to fall. And it was on October in 2015. And you could see like how Walgreens, which was a big partner of Theranos, then formally terminates the relationship in June of 2016, shutting down all the wellness centers and voiding thousands of test results. There's also a regulatory ban. Federal regulators ban Elizabeth Holmes from owning or operating a laboratory business, effectively destroying the core of the business model. It also talks about the national pressures built on past employees that risked everything to reveal the truth and what happened and actually see how bad it truly was. And it also talked about Silicon Valley, which Silicon Valley is a group of Apple, and it was a bunch of companies into one, and it showed the culture of fake it till you make it, and how Elizabeth was so good at this, and it showed on the outside how you really thought everything was going great, and she could pull all these people in using her voice and the way she talked, and then when you look at it from the inside, they had nothing. The technology was not good at all, and it should have not be used on any people. And then also just the ending had final investigations, and it voided many tests. Roughly 1 million blood tests from Theranos are either voided or correcting, highlighting the danger of the companies posed to patient health. The many lessons or takeaways you can get from this is how ambition and the drive to become successful is nothing without honesty. That you cannot build this $1 million corporation off of lies, because eventually everything will be brought out to the public, no matter how long you try to hide it or how good you are at covering up. It has to come out eventually, and you can take this into your own life. If you start lying to your parents a bunch of times, something will come out of it. And another thing you can see is that there will be tremendous consequences, just like how Elizabeth Holmes was put into prison and is still in prison today. And there is no easy way out. You got to take the blame for this. And how also, whenever you do this huge corporate scandal, it's not going to just affect you. It's going to affect the employees, the scientists, all the investors who put so much money into this. It's going to affect them and how your personnel is viewed out into this world. The main theme of this book is all the deceit and corporate fraud that happened within this business of Theranos, and all the multiple different layers of it, and how she was able to keep this together so long, and how people were genuinely so surprised. There were so many influential people in America, such as Vice President at the time, Joe Biden, and they even hosted a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign at the Theranos headquarters in Palo Alto, and how she deceived so many different people. One connection I got from this book is it reminded me of the TV show Ginny and Georgia. This show is about a mom who embezzled money from her ex-husband Gil to provide for her children. She may have had different methods or reasons than Theranos and Elizabeth did, but they still embezzled a lot of money, and ultimately affecting many people. And it just showed me the different ways of embezzlement and deceit can come across. And even though Theranos was such a much bigger, high standard, there was still a connection of taking away that money. The difficult for me, this book was challenging to read, not because only of the length, but the language used as well. It was hard for me to understand all the different scientific terms you needed to know, from the way blood testing works, and there was many chapters about just how blood testing works. It was very hard to get through for me because I didn't understand it, and it's just also hard information to read in general, because it wasn't always captivating. You just had to go through those parts. But one thing that also helped me was through halfway through the book, there was just multiple photos of the Edison, which was the machinery and different mini labs, and it showed pictures of Sunny and Elizabeth with most like investors and influential people, and that also kept me entertained because I could see with my eyes how it actually looked and how this was a very true and real thing that happened in this world. Some recommendation and final thoughts is I would recommend this book to those who love true crime that was less frightening. There was no murders or anything such of that. It did read like a thriller though, like it says on the front page. It was just very like you could see all the deceit and the corruption and the twists and turns. It leads you into wondering how people can be so powerful and convincing and gain that much money without being actually truthful, and how she held on to this lie for so long. It also explains the consequences and how others are truly affected to the wrongdoing. Overall, I did really enjoy this book, even though it was very hard for me at times to grasp. And I was like, okay, Maggie, you gotta keep reading. And it just was very interesting how someone can build up this amazing thing. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be the next revolutionary thing, this blood testing thing that could help so many people. And then it all falling apart and realizing, oh wow, this isn't gonna happen.